Coming up on Fresh Freedom, work requirements, self-reliance, community-driven solutions to end the cycle of dependency. And welcome to a special edition of Fresh Freedom featuring freedom-focused representatives fighting for your constitutional rights. I'm Nate Lucas, joined as always by Representative Eric Burleson from Missouri's 7th District. And our special guest is Dr. James Whitford, Executive Director for Watered Gardens Ministries in Joplin, Missouri, and True Charity, which is championing a resurgence of civil society in the fight against poverty. It's great to be with both of you.
Great to be here, Nate. Thanks.
I was doing a deep dive. I've got so many papers looking through our topic today, which is trying to end the welfare state here in America. And Representative Burleson has introduced a new bill called the Ending the Cycle of Dependency Act of 2025. When you look at these numbers, name the program, they are staggering. How much money the federal government is dishing out, especially to able-bodied working individuals.
Just in the last 10 years, welfare spending has gone from $848 billion to $1.13 trillion a year. And you consider just able-bodied adults who are on food stamps, receiving food stamps today, you have like 60+% of them who are not employed at all. And of course, how is anybody to escape?
So 60% of the able-bodied population that's on Medicaid don't have any job at all.
Well, I think there's a problem with Medicaid and work requirements right there also, but I'm talking about food stamps.
On
just
SNAP.
in food stamps,
Okay, food stamps,
on SNAP. You're talking more than 60.
I think we should still call them food stamps.
I think it's 62%. Well, I think most of America understands food stamps more than they do SNAP, but yeah.
But 62% have no job whatsoever.
Able-bodied adults who are unemployed, they're not working.
And they're not disabled. They're of working age, and for whatever reason or not.
That's right.
Living in their parents' basement, probably.
Well, and the thing is I think, Nate's talking about eliminating the welfare state, but really what we need to be talking about is how do we eliminate poverty? Poverty since LBJ's war on poverty has fluctuated between 11 and 15% for 60 plus years now. And it's never even dropped below 10%. So obviously, all of the programs that were launched in the mid-1960s are ineffective. And what we want to do is help people out of poverty. So we've got to start asking the question, how do we do that? How are we going to help people escape poverty?
This is a quote. This is amazing. We'll just see if you guys know who said this. This is back in 1996 on a welfare reform law. Quote, "The culture of welfare must be replaced with the culture of work. The culture of dependence must be replaced with the culture of self-sufficiency and personal responsibility." That would be...
I've got a guess.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to guess that's Bill Clinton.
You're very close.
Al Gore.
Very good, close. He was closer because this guy was president recently.
Oh, Joe Biden.
That was Joe Biden in 1996.
I would not have guessed that.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
The funny thing about being in politics, I guess, for as long as Joe Biden was, is that there's tape for everything you've said. So usually you've flip-flopped about 19 times when you're in as long as he has been. But what's astounding to me is that's a very rational take. And we have now slipped, and especially I think since post-COVID, there has been a absolute astounding amount of these welfare programs expanding and people not rejoining the workforce.
Yeah. In 2021, I think it was, we saw an increase in food stamps by 21%. So the Thrifty Food Plan came out that does the readjustment on food stamps, and it increased significantly right then. And some of the reasons that food stamps were increased in 21 were pretty wonky. Like, on average, if you can read this in the Thrifty Food Plan, on average, males' weight had increased, and therefore their caloric intake need had increased. That was one of the justifications of increasing food stamps. There were some really strange justifications there that increased food stamps by 21% in 2021. Yeah.
To me, it's show me the individual that's received enough, welfare that they've gotten out of it, right? It doesn't work that way. A job is what gets somebody out of poverty.
You cannot dump enough aid in a foreign nation to lift a foreign nation out of poverty, and you cannot dump enough aid on a person to lift a person out of poverty. It does require one common denominator, as complex as each individual is, and each life in poverty is. Every person to come out of poverty, it requires a job. Absolutely.
And really, what's frustrating is where we are is a situation that I think most Americans don't understand. So when we're talking about right now in this town making cuts to things like Medicaid, everyone is freaking out. Because what the Democrats are trying to make everybody believe is that we're cutting, disabled people off of Medicaid. We're going to cut their health care benefits, or elderly people. And that's not the case at all. What we're talking about is the remarkable, what people need to understand is the biggest population now are the young, able-bodied adults who should be, instead of pulling from the system, they should be contributing to a system that's there as a safety net for those people that might be disabled or
Absolutely,
elderly.
Yeah. I mean, the labor force participation rate has been on the decline for 70 plus years now. At the launch of the War on Poverty, there were 1 in 30 working age males who were not in the workforce. Today, it's 1 in 10.
Really?
1 in 10 working age males today are not in the workforce at all. So that's the labor force participation rate. It's not going to be reflected in the unemployment rate. But when you look at those who are actually looking for a job or not looking for a job and they're out of the workforce, that's the statistic, 1 out of 10 working age males. So it's very sad. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we keep piling on benefits, welfare benefits, that actually result in a perverse incentive, drawing people away from work. And it also crowds out good, effective charity. I mean, we're serving right now 230 charities across America who are leaning into the ideas of privately funded, outcome-driven, work-oriented approaches to solving poverty. But human nature is, if I'm dependent on something and I can remain dependent on a handout, I'm just going to stay there. So when big government comes in with a lot of handouts, it's actually crowding out good, effective charities that are working in local communities across America. And through relational inspiration, they're actually helping people out of poverty. But they would do it so much better if we could, as Nate said, remove the welfare state and all of the handouts that are coming from the federal government.
Yeah, the impact of the church has been watered down because people's money is being taken by their government, and the government is saying, hey, telling the church, we'll take care of health care for the needy. We'll take care of those costs, right? We'll take care of the people that, whether it's foods, we'll take care of feeding the poor and all of that. That's really it's government forcing you to be charitable, but right?
That's not real charity.
I mean,
though.
It's really at the threat of going to prison. Give me your money,
so I can give it to somebody else.
So that I can go give it to somebody else, and then run it through a bureaucratic program that is not in effect. That's not effective whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. So why not let us keep it?
Yeah.
And do what we can in our own community. It is a form of crowd out, is what we're seeing. There's even a good example in our district, where we are in Southwest Missouri, of a medical clinic doing volunteer work, helping the uninsured, and they ended up closing their doors as a result of the fact that every time that they would send one of their clients in poverty to go get a test, that whoever was at that center would connect them to Medicaid. And so they were no longer in need of the private volunteer-driven charity medical clinic. And they ended up closing their doors. That's a perfect example of crowd out. Some of the things that our good intentions, at the federal level, can often do harm that we just don't understand.
I would imagine, messaging is very important on this, because a lot of times when we get into debate about welfare programs, it can kind of sound like we're talking down to individuals. But really, we're looking to lift them up, to join the workforce, to contribute to society. And I would imagine with your experience, and I'm sure we all have personal experiences of people that we've been around, but when the light goes on and they actually find that success and the gratification that they feel, I mean, that if that doesn't get the hair on the back of your neck to stand up, you're probably not a human being.
Yeah, we've got at our mission in Southwest Missouri in Joplin, we've got a ministry we call the Worth Shop. We call it that because we know that work awakens worth in people's lives. And I had one lady who came in. She was doing one of the projects in our Worth Shop to earn food that she needed. And the project was knitting hats for newborns that would then be given to the hospital for newborn babies. Anyway, she worked on knitting hats, earned her food for the day, and I said, why are you, just out of curiosity, why are you here? Her name was Beth. I said, Beth, why are you here earning your food when you could probably go get it somewhere for free? And she said, well, my parents always taught me that if I could earn what I needed, it was better for me to do that, so that's why I want to come here and do that. She called me later and left a message and said, I want to thank you for helping me be equal as I felt like I was today. And it was an aspect of human dignity that was being restored or preserved for her. And we're stripping that aspect of human dignity from people when we continue to create dependency through repetitive handouts. So what we're battling against are a lot of ministries and missions who understand that principle, that there's the preservation of human dignity, having a sense of purpose, the joy of earned success. All of that is being crowded out by government programs that really don't know Beth. They don't know the individual. All they can do is draw a line and say, if you fall below this particular level of poverty, we're going to qualify you for this particular benefit. And it's really causing much harm to our nation today.
Yeah. I heard an interesting term that's kind of has been catching on lately. Like, this is from my teenage daughters. Okay, have you heard the term main actor energy? Okay, main actor energy. It's that kind of energy of somebody who the posture who's at that moment, whatever energy you've got, the attitude is I have the starring role in what moment of my life or whatever this scene is of life. I'm the star of the show, right? So when you say he's got main actor energy, that's the idea.
It's a sense of agency.
It is, but to me, it kind of harkens to the bigger picture here, and poverty is part of this. The whole system is that I think every person is a child of God, child of the Creator of the universe, an entirely unique individual, and everybody has a story to tell, and an adventure to live, right? And so, if people saw themselves the way that God sees them, right, then they would realize, I've got a lot of things in my life that I could accomplish or do and dream big, right? But instead, what we've done is when people look to government for so much, government just pushes people down to being a cog in the machine, right?
Yeah, something you said reminded me of something Adam Smith wrote in Wealth of Nations. He says, no one has ever seen an animal through its cries or gestures signal to another animal, this is mine and that's yours, and I'll give this for that. So that's a very simple but profound observation. Animals don't enter into a mutual agreeable exchange with one another. Only people do that. And so anytime our charity, whether it's public or private, stifles or diminishes the drive for a person to contribute what he can for something that he needs, we're actually diminishing some aspect of human dignity. And that's exactly what's happening today. We're stripping people of human dignity. We need to quit thinking about work as something bad. People are made in the image of a creator. Every single person. The people you pass by under the bridge,
That's
the
right.
people on Skid Row, it doesn't matter. Every person made in the image of a creator, of a producer, and therefore are intended to create and to produce. And our charity must uphold that, whether it's through work requirements like the bill that you're sponsoring, the Cycle of Dependency bill, or whether it's at the private charity level where we're seeing people and going, you know what? I see something in you. I see capacity and ability and potential in you, and to begin to capitalize on that.
So what has been the most, sorry of jumping in, but what's been the most effective ministry that you've seen or methodology for truly helping people get out of poverty? Are there church? I know that you consult with churches and other groups on how to change the way they do things, how to change the way that they
Well, I mean, there's some great examples. I love Ismael Hernandez runs a ministry in Florida called the Freedom and Virtue Institute, and he has a program called Self-Reliance Clubs. He's working in public school districts where they have service learning projects, where you're doing stuff with your hands, and he's helping them transition their service learning projects into earn it projects. So now kids are coupling their activity and their work, whether it be in a garden or whatever the project is, with something that they can earn, and then they can go and buy their school supplies with it.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thing. We need, we ought to get upstream from this and really start working more with youth and kids and helping them couple their activity and their work with what they can earn. So I think that that's a great example. There's another one in Atlanta called Bearing Bikes Works that works with youth, and it was a bike ministry where the thought was we need to give bikes to kids, and they realized, the kids can be a part of repairing their own bikes, and it became a ministry model that's really run by the kids who are in the ministry. And so it's just, there are a lot of models out there that I think are doing a great job, but it's hard if we're not adhering to this idea of subsidiarity, which is don't take from an individual what he can accomplish through his own industry and initiative and give it to the community to do for him. And don't take from the community what the community ought to do for the person and give it to the government. And so we're not layered correctly. It needs to be individual first, and then family, local community, civic organizations, municipality, long before you see state or federal government involvement. And until we get that layered correctly, we're going to have a disruption of the interdependent ties in communities and families that make communities and families healthy. And that's what's happened. And we've watched that. We know that as soon as the welfare programs took off in the 1960s, the interdependency in marriage and family started to melt away. And so we've got to get back to that.
Yeah. I mean, we've created a system. At one point in time, the family used to need each other. Right. So when, grandpa and grandma got to the point where they needed, some help and some care, they moved in with one of their children, right? And when they're living there, they also help and provide guidance and wisdom to their grandkids, right? Grandkids were able to see and learn so much from their grandparents by those kind of moments. And then, but government says, you don't have to do that. We're going to pay for them. We're going to take your money, and then we're gonna pay. The government's going to pay for your parents, your elderly parents, to go live in a nursing home or in assisted living, right? But it's a false belief that it's being paid for by somebody else, but you're paying for it. And then the other thing that happens, think about that same situation, that same family, where young girl maybe, ends up getting pregnant out of wedlock, needs to, the family brings her in, right? Grandpa, grandma there, mom and dad are there. They're all there taking care of each other, right? But instead, what we do is we say, here's some government money, go and get your own apartment, and here's money to take care of that child. And so now what we've done is we've separated family. And that's what we're seeing is a result of that.
You're on it. That's exactly right. And that dissolution of those family ties is incredibly harmful to our nation and the values that we pick up and carry from our families. And so you're exactly right. There was a young man, Seth, sitting in our dining room at our mission, and I hadn't met him before. I sat down. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm homeless." And I said, "Okay, well, how did this happen?" And he said, "Believe it or not," he said, "Well, an agency told me if I was homeless for a little bit," and he was living with his mom and grandma. And so it was a crowded little situation, but an agency said if I was homeless for a while, I'd probably qualify for housing. That's the kind of perverse incentive that's at work across our nation today, where we're holding people back from work, where we're not incentivizing good social capital and connections with family and community, and we're seeing that happen as a result of continued growth and expansion of a welfare state. I tell you, civil society ought to be doing this. Private sector, local churches, compassionate neighbors, that's who ought to be doing this work.
Yeah.
Senator Rick Scott has a really interesting take on this. He's worth quite a good fortune, but he grew up poor and rose through hard work. He wrote a great op-ed in the Washington Examiner, and he goes straight to the facts. He says in 2016, when Florida instituted a work requirement policy for food stamps, the number of able-bodied adults without dependents on the program dropped by 94% in 3 years. So simply just having work requirements, 3 years, 94% drop. That's
better
significant.
That's better than what it was in Missouri. Same year, 2016, 86% of able-bodied adults dropped off the food stamp program as a result of work requirements. So it's so telling, isn't it? I mean, that statistic just says, it's going to be okay. And when that happened, there were people all over our state who were concerned about folks starving to death. Not at all. Didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
Well, I think the conversation is changing, and especially with the transparency that this administration is giving with the Doge effort, and we're seeing where all of this money is going. And everyone's a taxpayer. Well, I guess everyone is. But suddenly you look at where the taxpayer money is going, and you start to realize this is unsustainable. This is corrupt. And people, the biggest revolution that could happen is if people just said, "I'm not paying my taxes." Then what would happen? That'd be interesting.
Well, I'm excited about the president's call for a revolution of common sense.
There you go.
And we need more of that. We need a coupling of common sense and compassion. And there's no reason that those should not come together. There is a way for us to love our fellow man who's struggling in poverty and homelessness, and to do it well, to measure our outcomes, to do it through a truly effective mode, and not lean on the government to do it for us.
The 9 most dangerous words, right? I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. It's crazy. Well, thank you both for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And just before we go, we should point out, Mr. Burleson, your bill, the Ending the Cycle of Dependency Act of 2025, it gets Americans back to work. It would codify work requirements for all able-bodied adult SNAP and Medicaid recipients between the ages of 18 and 59 who do not have children under the age of 6, and estimates taxpayers would save $430 billion.
$430 billion.
Over 10 years.
With a B.
And only Washington, D.C. throws around those numbers where it's like, it kind of gets lost in translation. No, that's $430 billion.
Which would be 1/4 of our deficit.
Yeah. Maybe those taxpayers would want to support our nonprofit instead.
Yeah.
Right?
Give people
we're
more of their
more
money.
Effective work,
Give
I promise.
people more of their money back, and they'll probably pick a good ministry.
That's right. Absolutely.
Absolutely incredible. Well, it's great to have you join us.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Nate.
James. Thank you, Representative. You can catch Fresh Freedom on Apple, Spotify, X, Rumble, YouTube. Stay strong, stay informed, and stay free, and keep fighting for freedom.